Love can make a person do extraordinary things, but what happens when love is no longer love but turns into an obsession? When a person cannot accept a breakup, cannot bear to see the one they love move on, and begins to believe that anyone standing between them is an enemy that needs to disappear. In popular psychology, people sometimes mention the story of Adele Hugo to describe an extreme form of emotional obsession. Adele spent many years pursuing a man who no longer returned her feelings. Her life was gradually consumed by an unrequited love to the point where she almost lost the ability to live for herself. But today's story does not take place in the 19th century. It happened in Sweden in 2008, and this time, the consequences did not end merely with a broken heart. On the evening of March 17, a young mother named Emma was at home with her two small children, Max, just 3 years old, and Saga, only about a year and a half. It was supposed to be just an ordinary evening. Emma was preparing dinner. Her children were by her side. The man she loved was on his way home. No one in the family knew that in just a very short time, everything they had would be destroyed. A mysterious figure appeared. A horrifying attack occurred. 2 innocent children were dragged into an adult tragedy. As for Emma, she was so severely injured that no one knew if she would survive. But what baffled the police most was still ahead, because when the investigation began, the people who seemed to have the clearest motives were eliminated one by one, and the final trail led to a woman from the past of Emma's lover. A person who had been rejected years ago, but seemed never to have truly let go. To understand why that tragedy happened, we must return to Emma's life before March 17, 2008, back when she still believed she was standing before a fresh start. Before Emma's name appeared in one of the cases that shocked Sweden, her life had been very ordinary. Emma was born in 1985 and grew up in Stockholm. When she was quite young, she met Nicholas. The relationship quickly grew serious, and eventually they decided to get married. Not long after, Emma became a mother. Her firstborn son, Max, came into the world. After Max came her little daughter, Saga. To Emma, the 2 children became the center of her life, but the marriage between her and Nicholas did not last as long as they had both hoped. According to records, more and more disagreements surfaced in their relationship. Ultimately, they decided to separate. However, parting ways did not mean the conflicts were over. Disputes over the custody of the 2 children continued between Emma and Nicholas. The situation once became so tense that Emma reported it to the police following threats from her ex-husband. But amid that high-pressure period, another man entered Emma's life. His name was Torgny Hellberg. Emma and Torgny quickly grew close, unlike the strain in her previous marriage. The new relationship gave Emma the feeling that she could start over. Torgny also gradually became close to Max and Saga. Over time, the 4 of them began forming a new family. Emma and Torgny even thought about getting married. They moved to a new house and began planning for the future. After everything she had been through, Emma likely believed that the hardest phase was finally behind her. But she did not know that Torgny also had a romantic past, and somewhere outside the family's peaceful life, there was someone who seemed unable to accept that her relationship with Torgny was over. Emma barely knew that person. Max and Saga knew her even less, but the mere fact that Emma was living the life that woman desired was enough to make her part of an obsession. And then came March 17, 2008, a day that started completely normally, but would end with a sight that Torgny could never forget. March 17, 2008 began like any other ordinary day in Emma's life. Torgny went to work, while Emma stayed at home with Max and Saga. That evening, she prepared a meal for her children and chatted online with her sister. There were no warning signs. Nothing made Emma think that danger was drawing near her house. Around 6:30 p.m., Torgny called to say that work would finish later than expected. He would come home later. Emma continued her evening with her 2 children. By 7 p.m., she was still texting her sister. Then suddenly, Emma stopped replying. No explanation, no goodbye message. The conversation simply stopped. No one knew that exact interval would become one of the most critical milestones of the investigation. When Torgny finished work and returned home, the first thing that felt unusual to him was the unlocked door. He stepped inside. Inside the house, nothing was like when he had left. Furniture was disarranged. On the floor, brown stains appeared. At first, Torgny did not understand what they were, but just a few seconds later, he realized it was blood. Then he saw Saga. Next was Max, and finally Emma. In that moment, Torgny believed his entire family was dead. Panicked, he called emergency services, but then a faint sound came from Emma's direction. She was still alive. When first responders arrived, they discovered that Emma and both children still showed signs of life. All three were immediately rushed to the hospital in extremely critical condition. While doctors fought to save the mother and children, the house was quickly sealed off. Police began examining the crime scene, but they encountered a major problem. No weapon was found. No clear fingerprints emerged that could immediately lead to the attacker. Furthermore, the fact that multiple medical personnel had to move urgently inside the house to save the victims caused significant disruption to the scene. However, the police had one crucial asset: time. Emma was still chatting at 7:07 p.m. After that, all contact abruptly ceased. That helped investigators narrow down the time frame in which the attack could have occurred. But a bigger question immediately arose. Who could want to harm a young mother and two small children right inside their own home? Initially, police did not have to look too far, because the first person they needed to check was the man who had discovered the scene, Torgny Hellberg. In the early hours of a case, police often start with those closest to the victim. And Torgny Hellberg was no exception. He was Emma's lover. He lived with her and the two children, and more importantly, he was the first person to discover the scene. Investigators quickly reviewed every word of Torgny's statement, particularly the time frame from when Emma sent her last message at 7:07 p.m. until he returned home. If Torgny was lying, just a small gap in his schedule could alter the entire investigation. But gathered data revealed that Torgny was indeed at his workplace when the attack occurred. His statement was verified. Torgny was eliminated from the suspect list. Police immediately turned to the second man, Nicholas, Emma's ex-husband. This was a completely logical line of inquiry. Emma and Nicholas had been in a custody dispute over Max and Saga. Relations between them had been tense at times, and Emma had previously reported threats from her ex-husband to the police. Looking solely at motive, Nicholas was clearly someone who needed to be thoroughly checked. But just as the investigation was focusing on him, another heartbreaking piece of news arrived. Despite doctors' best efforts to save them, Max and Saga passed away. Emma was still alive but remained in critical condition. The attack had now officially become a murder investigation. Police checked Nicholas's schedule, and once again, an investigation path that seemed full of promise collapsed. According to records, at the time the crime occurred, Nicholas was about 120 miles away from the scene, and police were able to confirm this. Nicholas was also eliminated. The two men with the closest relationships to Emma both had solid alibis. Police were back near square one. Meanwhile, Emma lay unconscious in the hospital. She might be the only person who had seen the attacker. Fearing that the culprit might realize Emma was alive and return to eliminate the witness, police placed a 24/7 guard outside her hospital room. The killer was still out there, but then a neighbor's account and camera footage near the scene provided the first clue. A mysterious figure dressed in black, and that person might not be a man. When Torgny and Nicholas were eliminated from the suspect list one after the other, police faced a harder question. If not them, then who appeared at Emma's doorstep that evening? The first answer came from a neighbor. According to records, the witness remembered seeing a person dressed in dark clothing near Emma's house around the time of the crime. Initially, the witness thought it was a man, but as they recalled it more carefully, a detail caught the police's attention. The mysterious person had quite a short and small build. Could it be a woman? Police immediately checked the security camera systems in the area, and then they found what they needed. A camera near the scene had captured the image of a person dressed in dark clothes, appearing during the time frame connected to the attack. The footage was shown to Torgny, and his reaction immediately caught the investigators' attention. Torgny could not state the identity of the person in the video with certainty, but that silhouette reminded him of a woman from his past. Her name was Christine Shurer. Christine was not Emma's friend. Nor was she a relative of Nicholas. She was Torgny's ex-girlfriend. Suddenly, the investigation opened up a completely new direction. But a question immediately arose. Torgny and Christine had broken up long ago. So why would a woman from his past be connected to the attack on Emma and her 2 children? To find the answer, police had to go back several years to a holiday in Crete, Greece, where Torgny first met Christine. It was just the beginning of a brief romance, but to Christine it seemed it had never truly ended. Years before Emma and the 2 children were attacked, Torgny had met Christine Shurer during a holiday in Crete, Greece. Initially, it seemed like just a summer romance. The 2 met, were attracted to each other, and quickly began a romantic relationship. But when the holiday ended and Torgny returned to Sweden, things began to change. According to records, Torgny gradually realized he did not want to continue the relationship. He made it clear to Christine that things should end. To Torgny, it was a breakup. But to Christine, it seemed to be merely a rejection she could not accept. Christine kept calling, kept writing letters, kept finding ways to maintain contact. She even traveled to Sweden in hopes of meeting Torgny and changing his mind, but Torgny still refused, according to records. During one rejection, Christine told Torgny that he would come to regret it. Afterwards, her condition became so severe that she engaged in self-harming behavior and required psychiatric treatment. Time passed. Torgny tried to move on with his life. He met Emma, fell in love with her, became a part of Max and Saga's lives, and began thinking about a new family. But according to descriptions in the records, Christine had not completely disappeared. She continued to monitor Torgny's life and found new reasons to force him to keep in touch. Then one day, Christine shared information that stunned Torgny. She said that she had given birth to his son. Not only that, Christine later said the child was ill. If that was true, Torgny could not simply turn his back. He needed to know what was going on. But the more questions he asked, the more unusual details emerged. According to records, a man later called Torgny, claiming to be the child's foster father. However, when Torgny asked basic questions, this man could not provide convincing answers. Eventually, Torgny and Emma began to believe that the child Christine spoke of might never have existed. If so, the issue was no longer simply a heartbroken woman after a breakup. A story about a child might have been fabricated just to keep Torgny in Christine's life. And while Torgny tried to build a future with Emma, Christine's attention seemed to begin shifting toward the woman by his side. Emma, a person who had virtually no direct relationship with Christine, a person who only wanted to take care of Max and Saga and build a new life with Torgny. But police would soon discover that Christine seemed to know far more about this family than anyone had ever imagined. She knew Emma, knew the children, knew where they lived, and even knew details about their daily routine. When investigators began searching Christine's belongings, they would discover traces that pushed the case into a completely different phase. Because this time, police did not merely find signs of an unreleased past relationship. They found things showing that someone had spent a great deal of time observing Emma's family. And the most terrifying question now was, how long had Christine been watching them? After Christine Schurer's name surfaced, police could not rely solely on the romantic past between her and Torgny to draw a conclusion. A conflicted past relationship might create suspicion, but to prove a person was involved in a crime, police needed evidence, and that was when the investigation entered a new phase. According to records, Christine was arrested by police for investigation. Investigators began examining her residence, personal items, and particularly her electronic devices. What they discovered inside Christine's computer made the case far more alarming. Inside were images related to Torgny, but it was not just Torgny. Police also found images of Emma and the 2 children. Some images were saved along with insulting or threatening content. That raised an important question. Why did Christine pay so much attention to a family with whom she had virtually no direct relationship? But the subsequent findings were even more notable. According to records, the computer search history contained queries related to how to commit a crime without leaving a trace, how to conceal evidence, and how to shift suspicion onto someone else. Police also discovered information about Emma's house and details regarding the family's daily schedule. Each individual detail might need explanation, but when placed side by side, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Photos of Emma, photos of Max and Saga, threats, information about the house, daily schedules, and searches related to hiding evidence. However, police still needed to connect that digital world to the actual crime scene. One of the leads they focused on was a shoe print found at the house. Because emergency personnel had to move urgently inside the scene, distinguishing prints was very difficult, but investigators identified one shoe print that did not belong to the rescue team. The sole pattern of this print was deemed consistent with a type of shoes Christine had once owned. The person living with her also provided information regarding those shoes. And then another detail emerged: a hammer. According to records, a hammer from the tool set of the person living with Christine had gone missing. The characteristics of this type of hammer were examined during the investigation, as they could be consistent with the object that caused the injuries at the scene. However, the hammer believed to be involved was not found. No single piece of evidence alone told the complete story. There was no murder weapon laid out right in front of the police, but now they had a chain of puzzle pieces. A woman who once had a relationship with Torgny, a prolonged period of contact after the breakup, an unusual interest in Emma and the children, information about the house, suspicious search data, a shoe print, and a missing hammer. While police continued building the file, not far away, another development was occurring. After days of fighting between life and death, Emma began to regain consciousness. She was the sole survivor of the attack. And if her memory returned, Emma might hold the piece that all other evidence had not yet been able to provide: the face of the person who stood before her door that evening, while police step by step built the case against Christine. At the hospital, another battle was ongoing. Emma had survived, but upon waking from her coma, she could not remember exactly what had happened inside the house that evening. The last memories before the attack had almost vanished. Emma did not remember the person who stood at the door, did not remember how she had been attacked, and most painfully of all, she did not remember that Max and Saga had passed away. When conscious, Emma repeatedly asked about her two children. The family was forced to tell her the truth. Max was gone, so was Saga. Emma collapsed, however, due to memory issues following the trauma. There were moments when she forgot what she had just heard. Then she would ask again, "Where are my children?" And the family had to tell her the truth all over again for Emma. Tragedy seemed to happen not just once, every time she forgot, and every time she was informed that the two children were dead, she had to face that loss all over again. Meanwhile, police still needed an answer to the most critical question: did Emma see the attacker? About a month after the incident, Emma returned to the house, and right where it all happened, fragments of memory began to surface. She remembered chatting online, remembered Max and Saga near her. Then there was a knock at the door. Emma went to open the door. Before her stood a woman of short build, wearing dark clothes. Then the attack began. According to records, Emma gradually remembered trying to protect her children during the assault, but her injuries were so severe that she eventually lost the ability to fight back. The detail about the short woman in dark clothing was particularly important because it almost perfectly matched what the witness had seen near the scene, and it also aligned with the image captured by the camera in the area. Now, police did not just have computer data, not just shoe prints, not just the past between Christine and Torgny. They also had the gradually returning memories of the sole survivor. But there was still one final challenge. Emma could remember a woman standing at the door. But could she recognize that face? The answer would come in a place where Christine could no longer dodge the evidence against her: the courtroom. When the case was brought to trial, prosecutors did not have a single piece of evidence that could explain everything on its own. Instead, they presented a chain of puzzle pieces: the image of the person in dark clothes near the scene data inside Christine's computer, photos of Emma and the children, information related to the house and family routine, the shoe print discovered at the scene, the missing hammer, and finally, the memories of the sole survivor. Throughout the trial, Christine denied responsibility. Records also describe some unusual behaviors from her during the proceedings. However, following a psychiatric evaluation, she was determined to be mentally competent and legally responsible for her actions. But one of the most haunting moments occurred when Emma appeared in court. Upon seeing Christine, Emma fainted, and afterward she recognized this as the face tied to her final memories from the night of March 17. Ultimately, according to records, Christine was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. The verdict closed the investigation, but it could not return Max and Saga to Emma, nor could it erase what the family had endured. Emma had to continue living with losses that no verdict could ever fully compensate. According to the end of the records, she continued her recovery process and later built a life together with Torgny, and perhaps that is what makes this case continue to ache in people's hearts. Because it began with something called love, but in the end held no resemblance to love at all. When affection turns into obsession, when rejection is not respected, and when a person views another as their property, the consequences can go far beyond a broken heart. In this story, that price was far too immense. 2 innocent children never had the chance to grow up. The case ended with a sentence. But for Emma, no sentence could ever bring Max and Saga back. The 2 children had nothing to do with the adults' romantic conflicts. They did not know who Christine was, did not understand what had happened between Christine and Torgny, and could even less understand why a story that began with affection could end in such a terrible tragedy. Emma survived, but surviving did not mean all the pain ended as well. She had to learn to move forward with life when her 2 children were no longer by her side, while carrying memories of the night that changed everything. According to the final part of the records, Emma continued her recovery process and later built a life together with Torgny. Perhaps this is also what makes this story so haunting, because the boundary between love and possession is sometimes deliberately erased by some. Loving someone does not mean owning them. Being rejected does not give us the right to destroy their life, and when a relationship has ended, respecting the other person's decision is sometimes not just a matter of emotion but a necessary boundary to protect everyone involved. In your opinion, what was the most alarming red flag in this entire story? Christine S. repeated. Attempts to contact Torgny, the story about the son, monitoring Emma's life, or what the police found on her computer. Please share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy true crime stories told layer by layer through evidence, psychology, and the investigative process, please like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss upcoming cases.